Amazon and Flipkart, where the user journey is very smooth. So you know, when you see the screen, you know that when I click this, this is going to happen. And when I do this, this is going to happen. So you're very clear about that. And sometimes there are also the user experience is designed in such a way that you want to go and click it. You want to go and check out what this product is all about, right? So that's what we call the user experience, and which is very, very important in terms of business, because only if I can, so if you go to a store, let's imagine we go to a store. So we see that the most attractive pieces are put outside, right? Like it's put outside. So that's when you actually don't go to buy something like that. Say, for instance, you go to a shop to buy a shirt, and then there are jeans displayed, and you really fancy, you see one that's very beautiful and you really like it. You end up buying it because it's a good piece and you really like it. Whereas the main purpose why you went to a shop is to buy a shirt. So similarly, in a website, when you go to buy a shirt, all that you can do is type shirt and then look at whatever you want. But whereas they have to sell you the jean just the same way they do in a store. So for that, you need to have a presentation. I mean, you need to have a user interface layer where you have different products. So if you go to Amazon, you'll always see that below a product, you can buy this with this. So that's where the selling point comes into picture, and they do marketing there. So this is very, very important. So this is what we call the user experience, right? So this is very important for a full stack developer. So one should be able to design and implement. Basically, in the complete development process, there are different roles also. So for the design, for the user experience, we have the UX and UI designers who come up with prototypes of as to how the website should look like, which buttons should go where, and all that. But it's a plus if a full stack developer has this this expertise also. Next comes the implementation. So it's always easy to talk about things, right? So say, for instance, I just told I want to start a business and have a website and everything. But the time that it takes is like really long, because the process that has to go through it's really complex, and it has a lot of minute details in it. So a full stack developer cannot miss all those details. So if I was a regular developer, I was just thinking of starting a website, all that I would do is make a website good enough to just go and like click a product and buy it, and that's it. So I will not be able to market the rest of my products. So whereas a full stack developer is someone who actually thinks about all these business ideas, and he has to think of how these intricate things. So that's where the implementation part gets more trickier. Yeah, and this is also time-consuming process. But yeah, a full-stack developer should be capable of doing that. And then next comes the testing. Any website can actually break. We have all seen so many websites going down and like it all going big on media. So this is where the testing comes into picture. Every project definitely will have a dedicated tester. But before testing, there is always a developer testing one should do before a product is sent. So this is where a full stack developer should be capable of thinking out of the box and test the product before it goes out. He or she should be able to think in all possible ways how it could break. And if someone wants to break in, you should also be able to think how they might break in and crack the code. So this is something. So yeah, again, jack of all trades. So that's all I can say. And yeah, so they should be flexible to new technologies. So the thing about being a full stack developer is you are not expertised in a particular technology. Yeah. So today there is a requirement for, say, for instance, a technology like Angularjs. There is a lot of hype. So this is how it was when I started my career. This is how it was. So maybe I will just stop a little bit to talk about my career and then how I started as a full stack developer, and then I will go with this point. So when I started, I first did the user interface designing and coding. So that's how I started. For like 3 months, I was doing that. And then, and that was I was doing in a language called Angularjs. So that's a JavaScript-based technology. And then I was offered, I was asked if I was interested in doing backend. So yeah, before I speak about this, there's one more thing I want to share here. So there is always this conception, or like maybe at least for me, I was thinking that a backend developer is more smart and more in demand than a front-end developer. And I was always thinking that the role of front-end developer is not as much as the backend developer, because I always felt the brain behind an application is in the backend. So I always wanted to be that brain, but apparently not. It's also involved in the full stack and the front end development. So the front end is as in the user interface development. So as I mentioned earlier, how you optimize code and how you do that. So this is where it comes into picture. So what happened, so coming back to my story, so what happened was I was a front-end developer and I was not really happy about it because of this, because I always wanted to be a back-end developer, do server-side coding, have access to databases and like have everything in my control and something like that. So this is what I wanted to do. Whereas I was the first project that I was put in was a front-end project, and I was not really happy about it. So I went and told my manager saying, I'm also interested in the back-end development. I don't know why you did not choose me, but I'm really interested. So I told them this, and then so I had to wait for 3 months. So for 3 months I was just doing front-end coding, and then after that I got an opportunity saying, why don't you do both? So why don't you do the front end as well as back end? So that's where I actually entered a new project, and that's when my career basically as a full stack developer started. So the first project that I started was with Node.js. So Node.js is basically a JavaScript framework that is used for back end coding, and it coupled with Angularjs is what I did as a first project. And so Angularjs was of big hype when I joined as a developer. That was 4 years back. And then what happened was I moved to Cisco after Congruent, and then that's when the Angular from JavaScript it actually migrated to TypeScript. Yeah, there is a slight difference in the way you code, so you will know when you actually Google it and like read about it a little bit. So a TypeScript and JavaScript are two different type of languages. It's not a big difference, but it has very considerable differences in there. And then, so what happened was I had to actually learn TypeScript in order to adhere to the market. So the market needs Angular developers and not Angularjs developers anymore. So I know for a fact that I'm not an expert in any particular language. So in order to make myself flexible to the market and adapt to the market, I had to learn another language. And then I came to Dubai, and here the project that I was supposed to work on was actually done in React.js. And here's an interesting story. So when I joined Searchy in Dubai, so I was actually I joined for the first week of my my job was basically when they were seeing to decide whether I can be on the job or not. Yeah. So the first project that I had was I had to create a website in React.js. Yeah. So I started with Angular.js and then Angular and then now React.js. So now this is the requirement in the market here. So I don't have a choice. I have to learn it. And then the next challenge here is I had to do it within a week's time. So what I had to do was I had to learn React.js within a week, and then develop a website for them, and then host it within a week. So this was the task I was given in order to land on a job. So this is how flexible a full stack developer is supposed to be. So you cannot be expertised or like specific about a particular technology. You need to be very, very flexible to learn new technologies and adapt to new technologies. So that's when one becomes a full stack developer. Okay, so I think I've been talking too much now. So any questions so far? Okay, I'm going to take the silence as no, and yeah. Okay, where do I start? Okay, so when we say full stack, sometimes if I would have heard about full stack development when I was in college, I would have probably thought, okay, if I have to do a development, I have to do it from like everything from the scratch. So I have to do a UI coding, I have to do the layers where the APIs happen, and then I have to do the network layers, and then I have to do a server-side coding, and I have to do coding for how the databases are connected, and then how I have to do coding for how. Okay, I have a question. Angularjs. One second. React. Okay. Yeah, I'll get back to that, Nitya Prakash. I have some material which would be useful for you. So yeah, let's. I will save this question for the end of the meeting. Yeah. Okay. Going back, I was saying. Yeah. So we all think that. At least I would have definitely thought when I was in college that we'll have to do something from the scratch. Everything has to be done by ourselves, and it's a lot of work. And like, oh man, how am I even going to do this? So this might be the mentality for anybody who is not aware. But here comes a savior. So there are these packages and frameworks that are actually very useful to us when it comes to a full stack development, developing an application. So these are the Node.js packages, the Node.js framework, Express frameworks. So there are different types of frameworks that using which you actually just do a command, and you get the complete project. You just have to put the logic inside. Yeah, so that will develop the front end and back end services as a package, and all that you've got to do is add files or modify files in order to do the logic. So it's pretty simple. So I will actually give you some tips in the future in the coming slides as to how to start and go about with it. Yeah. Okay, let me just brief you a little bit about the different languages with which I started, and with which is more famous now and more user and developer friendly. So here, the first on the list is the Node.js framework. So Node.js is a backend framework, and it is actually considered to be the most popular framework in the developer survey. So yeah, a Stack Overflow's developer survey. In case you're thinking what Stack Overflow is, a Stack Overflow is basically a developer's temple, I might say, because this is somewhere where we go every time you have a question. So the thing is, we as developers, we might not know everything. Especially full stack developers, we won't know everything because we are not specialized in some particular technology. So what happens is you're always posed with new things, and you don't know, you're clueless as to where to go. So there are similar developers who might have faced the same thing. So Stack Overflow is basically a forum that so yeah, so that's the, and there was a survey that happened, and that's where we got to know that Node.js is the most popular framework for the backend coding. And why Node.js is very simple is because it's basically a JavaScript framework. So JavaScript, as many of you might know already, is it's mostly used for front-end development. So you have so front-end development consists of designing, where you design everything using HTML, and then there is the logic behind the HTML goes using the JavaScript language, programming language, right? So this JavaScript programming language, there are like it is right now like reformed or like evolved into different frameworks like Jquery and Angularjs and React.js and everything. Yeah, but then the base, the concept behind is JavaScript everywhere, right? So this is a very flexible language, and it's basically, it does not have any classes. But yeah, of course, right now we have the object-oriented JavaScript and all of that, but it's basically a very free language. You can do whatever with it. Like there are no specified rules or anything. There are no syntax, and like, well, you do have syntax, but it's not very strict, to be honest. So that's where JavaScript is very flexible and easy to start with for any developer. And Node.js being a JavaScript framework, the communication with the front end and back end becomes easier. So at this point, I'll explain why. So when you consider Java or .NET applications, the communication between the front end and the back end happens in different languages. Yeah, if the front end might actually process the coding in JavaScript, but the backend would want something in a different language, something like XML or other language. So when this happens, it becomes very, there is an extra layer that comes in where the front end has to process the data and convert it into the server-friendly data and then send it to the server. So this is where the challenge comes with other programming languages, whereas that's not the case with Node.js, because it's the front end is also JavaScript, the back end is also JavaScript, so the communication becomes easier. It's always like how it's easier for us to like communicate with someone who knows our language. So I am more comfortable when I communicate with someone in Tamil. So if I meet someone, I speak to them in Tamil. If it's a person in a different language, I prefer to stay away unless and until it's required. So that's exactly how it's the same with Node.js. So that's why it's more famous and more easy and developer friendly. And the next thing is MongoDB. So MongoDB, most of you might not have come across because I think our curriculum mostly talks only about relational query databases. It's not bad because I think that gives us a lot to learn about how to handle databases when it comes to SQL databases. The relational concept itself is that's actually the base, I would say, that teaches us how to handle and how to manage and all the data and everything. So MongoDB is basically a document-oriented NoSQL database, and it's open source. Open source as in it's free. So other databases come with a cost. So if you have to use it, you will have to pay for it and all that. But Mongo database is basically it's free. So, and it's NoSQL. So there are no relational, well, you do have relations. You can have the primary key, foreign key, and candidate key and everything here. Whereas it is stored as document, and document as in it's stored as objects. Yeah. So, I mean, objects as in JSON. JSON is a type of one of the data types. Give us a question. What about just like Dino, which is gaining more popularity? Okay, I am not aware of Dino, but yeah, I can maybe look it up and let you know. I'm to be honest, I'm not aware of Dino. Yeah, I would like to hear about it from you, Babu, if you know a little bit more about it. Maybe we can save it for the end. Yeah. All right. Coming back to Mongo database. So it's basically stored using JSON files, and it's open source. So yeah, with the booming era of where the data, handling data is becoming a challenge these days, right? With all machine learning and artificial intelligence booming, and you have large chunks of data that you need to process and all that. So this is where MongoDB comes into play, where it's more easier to store unstructured data. So since Mongo database is not a SQL, it's not necessary that you actually adhere to a particular formula or a particular row column concept here. So yeah, so it's not necessary that you adhere to something. That's the reason why Mongo database, it's suitable for high volume data storage. Large chunks of data can be stored very easily. So yeah, and it's pretty much easier to handle data using Mongo databases. So that's why this is a good place to start with. Yeah. So any questions so far? I'll go to the next 3 languages. Otherwise, okay. I see that you guys are already asking questions in the chat, so I'm going to go about. Yeah. So. Where do we start? So we saw the backend technology stack, and we saw the database that we can use to develop an application. So the front end, there are different applications. So someone asked me, where should we start with Angularjs? So where should you start? I will again come back to that, but I will give you a little brief about what these languages do. Okay, so React.js, Angular, Vue.js, all these are basically JavaScript frameworks. But yeah, I would actually say don't get confused between AngularJS and Angular. Yeah, so AngularJS. Basically, Google developed something called AngularJS, and then after a particular point, they moved from JavaScript to TypeScript, and that's when they stopped calling it AngularJS, and it started becoming just Angular. They started calling it just Angular. So it's a TypeScript programming language maintained by Microsoft and designed with JavaScript. So that's not exactly a JavaScript framework, but yeah, I've just put it there. So let's see. So React is a JavaScript library. So it is created by Facebook. And so why React is very flexible is because because of its reusable UI components. So basically, it actually uses the MVC architecture. Where if you want me to brief about MVC, it's model view controller. Let me just think about something to explain model view controller. So React has this, the coding in React is done component based. So for instance, let's see, say for instance, I have a page where there are products listed. Yeah. So, and there is another page where a product is listed, and you get to do maybe, you get to just, in one page, you get to just see the products, and the other page, you get to add it to a cart. Let's just assume, yeah. So both of these pages have the same concept, which is the listing of products in a orderly fashion, right? But whereas one can do a selection, one cannot do selection. So this component, which actually has the orderly fashioned products, so this can be a component, and then there could be another component which calls this and uses this and then performs action on it. So it's basically reusable. That's what I'm trying to tell you here. Sorry if I put it in a, if it did not put it in a very good way, but yeah, you have different components and then a master component that reuses all the child components here. So that's why React is more flexible and reusable. And then there is another advantage with React is that React JS is not just used for web development. So there is something called React Native, which is also used for mobile app development, and the syntax and semantics are almost the same. So this gives, actually this widens the developer scope. So you are not just restricted to do web development, but you can also do mobile app development. So this is where React is more flexible and powerful. Yeah. And then we have the AngularJS, as I mentioned earlier. And then Vue.js is something which is not very popular among developers, but yes, some people still do use it. But yeah, people prefer to stick with something like React, which is booming right now. So yeah. And okay, I have mentioned something called the MERN stack, mean stack, and MERN stack, right? So, okay. Dino's successor to Node.js with the same creator. Okay. Okay. Cool. That's probably a takeaway for me, Babu, because I had no clue about something called Dino so far. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. Okay, coming back to this, MERN stack. So what is MERN stack? So we have the MongoDB, and so E stands for Express. So Express is basically a framework, and then R stands for React, and N stands for Node.js. So this, a developer who has mastered all these four frameworks and databases and technologies is whom we call a MERN stack developer. Same with the mean stack. Mean stack is where Mongo, Express, Angular, and Node.js. And MERN stack is Mongo, Express, Vue, and Node.js. So first I was a mean stack developer, and then I became a MERN stack developer. So this is how developers are addressed. Okay. Let me go to the next one. Okay, full stack developers. Why are they in demand? So what do you think could possibly be the reason? It pretty much explains itself, right? So you basically do everything. So who wouldn't want you? So would you prefer having a person to do, for instance, I want someone to clean my house. Would you prefer having one person to clean the sofa, one person to do the dishes, one person to do the washrooms, and one person to do just the dusting? So would we prefer 4 people doing something that one person can do, right? So it's always, we prefer to have one person who can do all the jobs, and within 2 hours, a span of 2 hours, and just get done with it, right? And it gets it's more easier, and managing is also much more easier. So why full stack developers are in demand? So this is why. So this full stack development concept, right? It actually it falls under the T model. So what is a T model? So as I mentioned earlier, a full stack developer is someone who has knowledge across different technologies and platforms, but in-depth knowledge about only particular concepts. So for instance, as I mentioned, let's take me for an example. I have experience with Node.js, I have experience with Angularjs, I have experience with Angular, React. So all these are different languages. I am not expert in any of these. I don't possess expertise in any of these languages, but my foundation is JavaScript, which is common to all these frameworks. So that's what makes me able to handle all these technologies. So that is where my in-depth knowledge lies. So you need to have a wide breadth of technologies and platforms. So you need to have a knowledge on that. Whereas you have expertise in the basic concepts, and that's how a full stack development falls under the T model. Yeah. So there is a fact here I want to share with you. So it's one of the roles that is in demand. And in fact, the demand in the last 3 years has actually gone up to 72% compared to before that. And it is also mentioned that the full stack developers are much more, they're better paid than the other roles in software engineering fields. So isn't that a good reason for us all to start with it, right? So yeah, let me get to the next slide. So here's a small image explaining what a T model is. So the breadth is where you have different experience and in different sectors and all that. And depth is where you have expertise in one particular concept. So this is basically what a T model is all about. Okay. Yeah. So why are they in demand? I would have already mentioned, but yeah. So you know that there are a lot of startups coming up these days. So especially in a world of Corona that we're all living in, businesses keep changing. Yeah. Yesterday, the airline business was just like doing so well. Like 2 months back, the airline business was doing so well, and look at them today. So they need to change their business plan. People keep changing, new concepts keep emerging, new demands keep emerging, new companies keep starting up, right? So when startups are increasingly becoming micro specialized, so the changing culture inside the company and the increasing so startups do not have a big budget. For instance, me working at Searchy, we do not have big budgets. We, if to be honest, our development team consists of 2 developers, me and one more person, and we are the only full stack developers. So we take care of the entire application. And then there is a machine learning developer who actually do the machine learning coding. So there's just one. And then that's it. So there isn't anyone else who contributes to the development process. It's just 3 people doing, developing and maintaining a huge application. It's pretty huge to be honest. So in startups, this is how it is. One has to actually wear many hats and be able to do a lot of all kind of tasks. So that's why full stack developers are more in demand in startups. So they're also paid well. See, in a place where I can actually develop, I can hire a front-end developer, back-end developer, someone who takes care of the database and all that. So I'm able to give all these 3 people salary to just one person, right? So obviously that's why the full stack developers are more in demand. And then the culture inside companies keep changing every now and then. So there might be times when like you might have a structure where there is a business administrator who tells you this and that, and then or maybe the CEO wants to directly contact you. Like basically it keeps changing. So when a full stack developer is in the loop, it's always he or she who takes care of it. Like it's very easy to fall into the hierarchy, and there is no much hassle of communicating to multiple people because it's just one person doing all the jobs. Yeah. So that's how it is more affecting for the changing cultures in company. And it's more cost effective. As I told you, what you pay for 3 people, you just pay for 1. So that way it's more cost effective. And when you have to like upgrade or switch to different technologies and all, so we all know full stack developers are very flexible, right? Okay, what other tools? How to do stack and sampling? Any beginner learning? Yeah, I will actually get back to that in a bit. As I mentioned, I just want to finish up this. So yeah, I have very less time. Oh my God, I have only 5 more minutes. Okay, so yeah, easy upgrading and switching. Easy upgrading and switching as in they are more flexible with new technologies. So it's pretty easy there. And then they are very quick and timely delivery, because since one person does it, the more time consuming it becomes is when there is a lot of communication happening, right? So for instance, if it's a communication full stack, I mean the front end and the back end, there is something that the front end says, I've developed this and I'm passing this variable to the back end, and the back end says, no, you shouldn't be doing this, I want something else. And this is where the communication and the clash happens, and it's a time consuming process. So that's where quick and timely delivery, if it's just one person doing it, it's just all of that is happening inside the brain, and it's just very quick. So it's much more easier. So yeah, and the programming efficiency, since one person is taking care of the code, the programming efficiency is much better and easy maintenance. So this is so these are the key points why full stack developers are much in demand. Yeah. So how do I start? This is to answer all the questions I've been getting about how do I start and what material should I be using. So I would suggest, for baby steps, I would suggest we all start with W3 Schools. Yeah, W3 Schools is a website that has like a wide range of material for JavaScript, Node.js, and all programming languages. So, and they have, you can actually try and do coding in their website itself. So they have all the, they also provide you steps as to how to install in your local machine and you can also do it in the website itself. So that gives you the flexibility. So you can also go through for Mongodb tutorials. It's not available in W3 Schools. So you can preferably use Tutorials Point. So these would be my recommendation, because that's how I started. And then for intermediate or advanced course, you can go for Coursera or Udemy courses. So yeah, mostly people actually, when you get on a job, you hands-on learn from the job itself. And if you have to do final year projects using this, you can definitely go for one of these courses. So yeah, I think I'm pretty much done with my slides. So does anyone have any other questions? Okay, is free code camp certificate worth? Okay, I am not sure, Babu, if if it's valid. See, the thing is, certifications companies do consider, no doubt about it. People consider more of hands-on experience, and yeah, actually, you should. Just a certificate is nothing when you are theoretically knowledgeable, but you cannot do things practically, if you know what I mean. So a certificate is definitely a plus, but you need to be able to demonstrate the skills practically. That's when you are more people will want to hire you. That's when people will want to hire you. So that's something I would recommend. It's even if you don't have experience, or if you don't have a certification, if you go through some courses and you get a very good hands-on experience, and you can just develop something for them in a day and show them that you have these skills, that would be more than enough. But yeah, a certification is always a plus. So yeah. And anything else? Definitely. Is Python, Django a place to start? Definitely. So I did not mention much about Python because I'm not an expert in Python, but that's a good place to start. And Python is more useful when you have to do a lot of machine learning or artificial intelligence related projects. So when you want to do some business related projects, it's more it's better if you start with something like JavaScript, Node.js frameworks and all that. When you do something like a research oriented a project, or when it comes to artificial intelligence based projects, Python is definitely a good place to start. Python is not necessarily flexible when it comes to doing front end, back end coding, and also for the back end will be in Python, but the front end, as I mentioned earlier, the communication might be a little different, but the thing is, when it comes to artificial intelligence based projects, that it is definitely a plus. So you have to choose your cards well there. So that's my suggestion. Yeah, I'll definitely fill the feedback form. Is that feedback for me or for the students? I'm assuming it's for the students. Okay, any other questions? And okay, can we still get a job as a full stack even if we don't have a degree? Wow. Okay. To be honest, I wouldn't encourage that. I would definitely not encourage that. But I know a few people who actually landed on a job after they finished their engineering course, but they had still arrears left. They had a job, and they were not exactly on the job as a developer, but I mean a developer or a tester, but they were more like an intern. So you can intern at companies, gain the experience while you're still finishing your arrears. But though people say these days that it's just the skill that matters, it's always better to have your own degree. So yeah, you will still get a job, but you will not be paid. So you will not be paid equally as a person who has a degree. So would you want that? So it's better that we crack on the degree. It's just nothing. It's a couple of papers, right? Come on. So yeah. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, I'll just go through the questions again. AngularJS, React.js, where should you start? So I gave you the place where. Nitya Prakash, I gave you where you could start. And then the next thing is, what about Dino, which is gaining more popularity nowadays? So yeah, as I mentioned, I'm not aware, but yeah, I will give it a read, and maybe, yeah, that's a takeaway for me. Thank you so much, Babu. And then we have house stack ensembling. I'm not sure about that. I don't know what ensembling means. I'll have to go for a dictionary now. Okay, what is stack ensembling? I would probably say, from what the meaning looks like, it looks like how you put together the front end code and the back end code. So how to do that? You have these frameworks doing it already. So that's how I started. It's always wise to go with a framework that does the front end, back end, and all these connections and ensembling. So that's where frameworks come into picture. So that's how you do a stack ensembling. Let me know if you have any more doubts or if I did not answer you correctly. Yeah. Okay. And what are the other tools that we can focus on for full stack developer? Any beginner modules? So yeah, I shared with you. So the most in-demand roles are for React.js developers. So I would suggest you start with that, because when you just go out into the market, people will just grab you there. So yeah. Is free code can be, I answered this already. Python, Django also I already. Ma'am, what about Spring MVC frameworks? And I did my final project using these frameworks. Actually, it's a full stack web application. I stick to these as I'm comfortable with Java. Definitely. So yeah, Spring MVC and Hibernate are also, you can definitely use that. Since I'm not an expert at it, I did not want to take that out right now. But you can always go for that if you're comfortable with that. There are companies that are in demand for these frameworks and these languages also. It's not that since I mentioned only React and Angular, it's only these languages that are in demand. It's if you would see companies like IBM and Cisco and all, there are still they still have projects using Java and .NET and all that. Excuse me, sorry about that. They still have projects using these languages, so you can. This will definitely your skill will actually prove useful in for landing on a job in such big companies. So yeah. Okay, and a little bit of jQuery as I needed database to display my products, data table to display my products. Okay, yeah, jQuery is always a plus, but jQuery is a little outdated right now, not as good as the other JavaScript frameworks. jQuery, I remember doing, I actually learned jQuery when I was doing my training, and it was just a part of the training. So that's how old it is. Right. So if would you do a scripting in plain JavaScript? No, right? So jQuery is something like that. It is a little old. So it's better to go for packages where, see, the knowledge is always a plus because the concept remains the same. But it's always better to go for a scripting framework that's a little more advanced so that you're up to date and people would want to hire you. So that's the thing here, right? In this era where there are a lot of people losing their jobs and everything, how will we make ourselves resourceful to companies? That's what is more important, right? So it's always better to have multiple, expertise across different technologies, and like, yeah, being updated with the technology. So that's when you will always be in the market and people would want to hire you. So yeah, that's something I would want to add. Okay, is in MERN stack, which one should actually start with either MongoDB or Express? Okay, so this thing comes up as a package. Okay, I'll tell you. I would suggest how to start with MERN is maybe just do one thing. Just Google how to create a Node.js project, okay, using Express. I'm going to write it down just so that you all are aware of it, just for your notes. Google create Node.js project using Express framework. Yeah, this will actually this will return, this will explain a step-by-step, step-by-step guide to how to create a Node.js project and how to using Express framework and React.js, yeah, and how to ensemble, let me use this word, ensemble the whole, ensemble everything. So I've just sent something in the chat. So if you would just Google this, create a Node.js using Express and React.js framework, you will get a step-by-step guide, okay? So you will have to actually install npm Node.js in your machine. And then again, that will also be explained. It's all self-explanatory. If you just Google everything, it's there, to be honest. So that's how we all learn. And trust me, W3 schools, it's really, really useful. And it's very easy to follow also. So I would suggest you start with that. And then, and it's not, by the way, to answer to your question, Nitya Prakash, in MERN stack, which one should you start with? I would suggest start with React and then Node. See, the whole thing comes as a package. But when you want to start individually learning something, start with React and then with Node. Express is just a framework that actually completely, again, ensembles all these technologies. So React first, Node next, and then MongoDB. So this would be the order I would maybe suggest. So yeah, are full stack developers in demand? I just did a presentation on that. And yes, Vinita, full stack developers are much in demand because companies want just one developer doing all the jobs. and not separate developers doing it. So, and especially in a world of automation and everything where you want to cut cost everywhere, so full stack developers come very handy. And especially in the era of changing, I mean, things keep improving and modifying, right? So full stack developers are very flexible when it comes to adapting to new technologies. So that's why they are in demand. So yeah, it's a good place to start, I would say. Any other questions? Okay, it looks like someone else is presenting. Oh. Okay, ma'am, learning artificial intelligence and deep would be more useful for me. Actually, I love artificial. Definitely. Okay, if we have the time, ma'am, do we have the time? Can I go for a few more minutes?
Continue, Aprajita.
Yeah,
No time limit.
Okay. So the company that I work for is called Searchy. Yeah. And what we do, let me just give you a small briefing about what we do at Searchy. We are basically an artificial intelligence based recruitment solution providers. Okay. So what exactly is the product? So when for instance, we are all at home right now, right? And like we're just thinking if we'll ever land on a job. So what Searchy does is we have a web application that does video interviews. Okay, so we have a bot that actually does the video interview. So for instance, if you find a job on LinkedIn and you click apply, so if the employer is actually is using our product, when you click on the link, you will land on our Searchy website. And you will actually enter all your details, your skills, the years of experience, and what your interests are, and everything. And then whatever the employer defined predefined questions, right? So the employer might want to know about you, like he might ask you to like just talk about yourself first, and then what are your interests, and if you're expert, if you have experience in some technology or language or anything like that. So all these questions will be predefined by the employer, and our bot will actually ask you these questions. And all that you have to do is answer. So it will record your video, and you'll have to answer to the bot. So this is the video application platform that we have. So what happens to these videos that we record, right? So these the recorded videos are actually passed through a machine learning model. And what this machine learning model does is it actually reads our facial features. Okay, so for instance, I'm doing an interview. What it does is it actually observes my body language, my eye movements, my hand movements, my lip movements, like the different touch points in the facial expressions. So it uses open face, a technology called open face, to do that, to recognize the facial points and everything. Okay, so it recognizes all this. So it takes features for every 2 seconds per frame. It takes features, and then it does a processing. So we have an in-house psychologist using whose research we use to actually process these features coming out of the video, and then tell if the person is fit for the job or not. Basically, we do an emotional analysis on the person itself using the facial features and body language. So this is the artificial intelligence-based product that we have. So if you are interested in it, definitely, it has a big future, because in a world of automation, artificial intelligence is definitely booming. So definitely I would recommend you to go deep into learning more about artificial intelligence. And for that instance, the Django and Python is a very good place to start. I hope I answered your question. And then, yeah, I want to start my career in cybersecurity. Can you recommend me some courses? Okay, to be honest, I'm not the best person to talk about cybersecurity because I myself am not aware, but I'm sure there should be some Cisco related courses. So you should actually check out Cisco's cybersecurity courses. So my husband is a system administrator. So he has done a couple of courses in Cisco. So I would suggest you go through that. And definitely, when you go to Coursera or Udemy, you will definitely be able to spot courses there. So I would recommend first doing analysis on these websites first, and then going for a Cisco, because Cisco might be a little advanced, or I'm not sure. So I would suggest to go with these websites for cybersecurity. Yeah. Anything else? Thanks for all these questions. It's actually quite exciting. Keep them coming.
I think no more queries. Thank you, Aprajita. Thanks for being with us. I think our students enjoyed the session.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for the opportunity, I must say.
Yeah. Nancy, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am. So I take this time to thank our Honorable Chairman, respected COO, for giving this platform to us. I extend my thanks to our respected principal, our beloved vice principal, our HOD ma'am, and all the faculties of PSC department to make this happen. Thank you, Abhijita. Thanks for the wonderful session. And
Thank
of
you.
course, I'd like to thank all the participants for their interaction and patience in learning. And I request all the participants to post their feedbacks in the feedback form. The link has been sent in the chat box. So kindly post your feedbacks there so that we can improvise ourselves for the forthcoming webinars. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. See you.
Thank you, Aprajita. Thank you so much. demo